Hi, I'm Matt Barry from ESPN. You're getting ready to watch one of the best college football podcasts ever. It's the Harris Highlight Show.
Na 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 na.
Coming to you live from downtown Phoenix, this is Season 2, Episode 14 of the Harris Highlight Show. Joining me this week is our college football analyst, Lyle Golston and Josh Schaefer, with our executive producer, Brady Klein. I am your host for the evening, Blake Harris. Gentlemen, how are we on this fine Tuesday evening at the end of November?
Doing well. Conference championship week. Things are looking good. Sun Devils beat the U of A. It's been a good week, except for Todd.
I reiterate everything Josh just said. Best time of the college football season right now.
Thank God it's over. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to miss college football so much, dude. It's crazy.
We have a very hectic week to discuss. That is easy to say. But guys, before we get into that, this week's episode is brought to you by SeatGeek. Head over to SeatGeek.com, enter the promo code Harris Highlights, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Christmas is coming up, so get that special someone in your life some tickets and save money. It'll be our little secret. But guys, the latest college football playoff rankings came out today. The second to last rankings. Now this was a very, very, very controversial ranking coming into it, because a lot of people, they had top 4s and top 6s that were all over the place. There were just 4 teams or 5 teams that a lot of people actually had at number 1. So coming into the night, no one knew how it would look. I personally predicted the top 4 spot on, but hey, I'm not here to brag. But the latest rankings have been revealed, guys. And once again, we have a brand new number 1 team, and that is Clemson. And look at this. At number 2, we got Auburn. So we got the Tigers at 1 and 2. So guys, Clemson, are they deserving of the number 1 ranking?
I'll start it off. I thought that this was my top 4 ranking as well, Blake. Honestly, when it comes down to the top 25 as a whole, I only have one complaint, and it's that I think Washington State should have dropped a bit more. But other than that, I think they're pretty spot on with the rankings here. In terms of Auburn, I am happy with the rankings. This is what I would have made the playoff rankings, especially with the top 4. But here's my argument for why I think Auburn could be the number 1 team in the country. 1, they've beaten the number 1 team in the country, not once, but twice. Second, yes, they have 2 losses. However, if you put them against Oklahoma, are you for sure saying that Oklahoma gets a win? Or if you're putting them against Wisconsin, are you saying for sure Wisconsin can get a win? What about Alabama again? Or Georgia? Because they've already proven themselves against them, and they were both not field goal wins, not extra point wins, not touchdown wins. They were convincing wins. Now, although these games, some of them, I mean, more so the Alabama game than the Georgia game, but the Alabama game had its really good moments. But Auburn won in convincing fashion. And that's why I think that if they were the number 1 team in the country, I would not have any complaints. But I do get that this is a controversial topic because they have 2 losses.
I wouldn't have had a problem with them at number 1, but again, the 2-loss factor plays a big part in this thing, as well as the fact that Clemson has 1 less loss, like we just touched on. And oh, by the way, one of Auburn's 2 losses is to Clemson. And I think the committee looks at head-to-head play and takes it very, very strongly into account in terms of the rankings and what they decide week to week. So I think that's what ultimately jumped Clemson up to 1. And I still do think they're the best team in the country. People forget. They like to say they lost to Syracuse. Well, Kelly Bryant got hurt early in that game, and that was their 1 loss without their starting quarterback. So I like Clemson where they are. Auburn, despite the 2 losses, no problem with them at number 2. They've deserved it. Like Josh just said, they beat 2 number 1 teams this season. Oklahoma, Wisconsin, no problem there. I'm just happy Bama dropped out, and I think we'll dive into this more later, but this was my top 4, and I'm pretty satisfied with it.
I have no complaints about this. I really like Auburn at 2. There was a lot of talk of them being at 4 because of the 2 losses, but like what Josh said and Lyle said and what everyone else has said, you beat the number 1 team, not once but twice, you deserve to be that highly ranked. I could see a case where they could be 1 as well. But I think since Clemson only has one loss, that's the one factor in that place.
Originally, when I did this, I actually had Auburn at 1, but then I switched it today because I completely forgot about the game in which Clemson defeated Auburn earlier in the season. So I think ultimately that's what changed it, because they do look at the head-to-head matchups. So I think Auburn at the moment is the best team in the country. I think if you put them against anyone, they'll win. But
especially if we're looking at power rankings.
Yeah, and I would put Oklahoma at 2 in regards to that case as well. But Clemson at 1, I like that. But at this point, it doesn't really matter, because you got the conference championships coming up this week. A lot can definitely change, but let's switch things over now to Oklahoma at 3, Wisconsin at 4. Like I said, there were people that had Oklahoma at 1, and you can make a case for them, because ever since that Iowa State game, in the game in which they just barely lost, they have looked like a dominant team. Baker Mayfield is playing out of his mind right now, and Wisconsin at 4. They move up a spot. They're finally in the top 4. They're 12-0 on the season. A lot of people were saying they're not deserving of a top 4 ranking, which you can understand, because their schedule has been absolutely weak. However, the last few weeks they've played a few tough opponents, but Oklahoma, Wisconsin rounding it out in front of Alabama and Georgia. Do you like the 3-4s they add?
I'll start it off. I think when it comes down to the 3-4s, I think the Oklahoma spot at number 3 is a for sure bet. I like that one. Wisconsin at 4. I agree with this, but again, kind of with the Auburn potentially being the number 1 team, I'm actually going to go a little bit devil's advocate here. Let me start off by saying, sorry, Blake, probably going to get hate for this, because whenever we say something about Wisconsin, we tend to upset a few people. But let me just say this. Despite being 12-0, I think we all agree that out of the top 5, maybe even 6, 7, 8, or 9 teams in the country, Wisconsin is not the 4th best team out of potentially the top 9. However, they are undefeated, and they've proven that they deserve to be there. But we do talk about their strength of schedule, in which case I think that Alabama is a better team than Wisconsin. So, if you were to put Alabama at 4, despite the fact that they're not playing in a conference championship, this is what makes me think if you put Alabama at 4 and you put Wisconsin at 5, you let Wisconsin go in and prove that they deserve to be there. If they get beat up, they don't deserve to be there, in which case, as of how it looks right now, Alabama will probably hop right back in if Wisconsin loses. If Wisconsin wins, then they can overtake Alabama and show off that they deserve to have that number 4 ranking, if not even higher. That's my reasoning. Overall, I'm happy with the top 4 right now. I think Wisconsin deserves to be in there, but I thought that I would play devil's advocate a little bit.
I think the reason they put Wisconsin at 4 is the biggest reason being that they are undefeated. They have earned the right to be there. But you look at Bama at 5, and I know people are going to talk about this. Is Wisconsin better than Bama? Well, that's up, that's controversial. That's up for discussion, of course. But you just look at Alabama's schedule. People talk about the strength of schedule with Wisconsin, and it hasn't been strong. Neither is Alabama's. They don't have a top 15 win this season. They're one tough game on the year at Auburn, and I don't want to say they got embarrassed, but they got severely outplayed in that game. And I think what they're doing now by putting Bama at 5 is saying, look, these 4 teams have earned it over you, and if one of them slips up, then yes, we'll let you in. But if everybody in the top 4 does what they're supposed to do, then this is our top 4 for the college football playoff.
Yeah, at this point, the committee doesn't really lose anything, because you touched it perfectly. You got these top 4 teams that are all playing in the conference championship this week. If one of them goes down, most likely Alabama leaps in. Now, we're going to be getting on to what ifs a little later, but I think Alabama, I personally had them at 6, because I still think Georgia is a better team than Bama, and plus, I think Georgia definitely has a much better resume. But like I said, at this point, we're going to have to wait and see. But it will get interesting with the SEC, but once again, we'll get later to the predictions later in the show.
I know a lot of things would have to play out for this to happen, but if Ohio State goes into this Big Ten championship and destroys Wisconsin, do you guys see a chance where they could jump back up?
Only if Oklahoma, Auburn, or Clemson loses. If Clemson, Auburn, Oklahoma win, I don't think Ohio State has the potential to leapfrog over Bama. I mean, they might, but it'll be interesting to see. But one team I want to touch up on really quickly, and that is Miami at 7. And they had an absolutely disgusting game against Pittsburgh this week. I think they pulled their quarterback, right? They pulled him.
They pulled Rozier.
They pulled him and then put him back in when they started to get a comeback.
Oh, you're right.
So they pulled them. So now they fall 5 spots to 7. They were at 2. We've been saying this the entire year that we do not think Miami is a good team. They had that convincing win over Notre Dame a few weeks ago.
And then every other game's been super close against UNC, against a bunch of other teams as well.
But now the way Notre Dame's been slipping, it's that win is not looking as impressive. But Miami, guys, they do fall to 7. So this is another interesting spot as well where they do have one game against Clemson left. But if they can somehow beat Clemson, can we see Miami make that push into the top 4? Is that going to be convincing enough to have them leapfrog 3 spots?
It's a similar story of that Ohio State chance of getting in the playoff is you have to have a whole lot of other things happen for that to happen to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think Miami does have a better chance than Ohio State. But like I don't think Miami's a bad team. I don't think they are at all. I think they are a good team. I think they deserve to be in the top 7 or 8 teams in the country.
Are they the 7th best team in the country?
I think they are one of the top 10 best teams in the country. I'll say that. I don't see how you can argue against that. Yes, they've had some close games, but they do have a pretty decent resume. Better than, I'll say it right now, we'll get hate for it. They have a better resume than Wisconsin, who is the number 4 team in the country right now. And I think we can all agree on that. But Miami...
Miami does?
I think so.
I don't think so.
Oh, I do.
They got the win.
100%.
They got the win.
100%.
They got the win over Notre Dame.
But Wisconsin doesn't have any ranked wins.
But Miami has been close in so many games.
Wisconsin's best win has been Iowa.
It doesn't matter though. Wisconsin's getting their wins convincingly. Miami has struggled.
Okay, Notre Dame's slipping, but they're still at 15.
Miami, despite their loss to Pittsburgh, which was ugly, they beat a UVA team the week before. Who a lot of people think that UVA is trash. They were a decent team this year, I think.
Well,
additionally,
how many wins they beat 7?
They beat up Notre Dame 41-8. 1 week before that, they beat 13th ranked Virginia Tech 28-10, and they do have some other decent wins on their schedule. We continue to talk about Florida State. Florida State was not a good team this year because of certain injuries they had, but they still do have some very insane athletes on their team. I think Florida State is an okay team, but they do have some decent wins on their schedule. I think their resume is 10 times better than Wisconsin.
To be honest, I think with Miami in the playoffs, I think it's a little bit of a different scenario than Ohio State. With Ohio State, they have 2 losses. They're a little farther down than Miami. I think they would have to beat Wisconsin and beat them handily to have a shot at the top 4. Whereas Miami, if they go in there and beat Clemson, I think they're a lock for the college football playoff because they would have won their conference championship. They would have only had 1 loss. I know it wasn't a great loss against Pitt, who only has 4 wins, I believe. But even still, with 1 loss, a 1-loss ACC champion who beats the number 1 team in the country, I think they get in if it happens. However, I think beating Clemson is a stretch.
I'm just thinking to Wisconsin really quickly, and their closest win this year was by 8, and that was against Purdue. But they do have wins against Northwestern, who is ranked, I think, 20th right now. They beat Iowa, who at the time was ranked 20th by more than 20 points. And then they beat Michigan, who was ranked at the time by more than 2 touchdowns as well. And then all their other games this year have been by 20 to 30 points.
Okay, but also go back. You were talking about how Notre Dame is no longer a flashy win for Miami, but it is still, like I said, 10 times more flashy than a win against 20th ranked Iowa and 24th ranked Michigan. Okay, but they have
killed them.
Yes, and they have wins over other decent teams too. Their best 2 wins of the whole season for Wisconsin are Iowa and Michigan, who are no longer relevant.
I mean, they have Northwestern, so I was wrong on that. Northwestern is ranked, so that's their 1 ranked win on the year. But other than that, I think a Notre Dame win is much more impressive than a Northwestern win. Notre Dame's still 15.
They struggled against a 1-win North Carolina team, or do they have 2 wins?
Okay,
that one they struggled with. Georgia Tech, who I believe has 3 wins, maybe 4 wins. They needed a 4th down.
But then you can say the same thing for Wisconsin because they won by what, 14 against Illinois?
Yeah,
it's Illinois.
14 against Illinois. They won
by 8 against Purdue.
Against Purdue, who is a 500 team.
Hey, Purdue's a good team.
Purdue's not a good team. They are a
the Jeff Brom era in
team.
Purdue. The turnaround's crazy. But Lyle brought up a team a minute ago was Northwestern. I was going to say they're the most overlooked team in the Big Ten right now. No one said anything about them, and they're sitting at what are they sitting at?
9-3.
They're 9-3, but they're 21st right now in the college football playoff ranking. That's huge for this Northwestern program, who last year was on the up and up, was getting better. Their basketball team's getting better. This Northwestern team and this whole school for other sports, you got to watch out for these guys. These Wildcats are going to be a fun team to watch out for.
Well, here's a team that did the most moving this week, and that is Stanford. They moved up 9 spots after beating Notre Dame, so Stanford, they're sitting there at 12th now. It seems like just a few weeks ago we were talking about Stanford and how much of a letdown they were when, at the beginning of the year, a lot of people had them coming out of the Pac-12. Well, now they're in the Pac-12 title game, so guys, Stanford, just like that, all of a sudden, ranked 12th. They got a game against USC this week. If Stanford wins this game, they could finish the season in the top 10.
Yeah, I think that the reason why they jumped up 9 spots after a win against Notre Dame was, although this is a good win for them against Notre Dame and they won convincingly, I don't think that jumping up 9 spots is reflective of beating this Notre Dame team, which has been struggling lately. However, I think a 9-3 team at 12, I have no complaints. It's just of where they were before, and I think that jumping up 9 spots is a lot. However, I think that makes this week's game against USC look a lot better. It's more exciting.
I don't have a problem with a 9-3 team at 12 either, especially with some of the convincing wins they've had over UW, over Notre Dame. They haven't lost a home game this year. All 3 losses have been on the road in a couple hostile environments too, between USC, Wazoo, and then of course they lost that early game at San Diego State. But Stanford, 9 spots, maybe it's a little much, but all in all, I think they're pretty deserving of where they're at.
The one team I want to touch up on, and this is the one that I have the most passion for, and that is UCF at 14. They just played arguably the best game of the season, beating South Florida this past week. But guys, UCF, they're 11-0 on the season, and they have absolutely dominated every game they've played in. Their only ranked win at the moment is against Memphis, who is currently sitting at 20. But that was by 27 points.
South Florida was not a bad team.
South Florida, they're not a bad team. I think South Florida should be ranked. They only have 2 losses on the season, but man, they've had some good games. They beat Navy by 10, SMU by 7, but you look at the rest, and they're just blowouts. So UCF, this is going to be an interesting one. We mention this every week. They're exactly like Western Michigan of last year. They go undefeated. I think they're going to beat Memphis this week in their conference championship game. Most likely they're going to get a New Year's Six Bowl and play. Who knows? So the question is, do you think UCF should be ranked higher than 14, and do you think they're going to prove they're worthy in their New Year's Six Bowl?
No, I don't think they should be ranked higher than 14, and if they win this week against Memphis, which I don't think we should be sleeping on Memphis either, I think that's a good team coached by Mike Norvell. I think that if they win that game, then yes, I will be behind them in their bowl game. What I want to see is I would like to see, okay, with these, there are 3 teams that are a group are not Power 5 teams in the top 25 for the playoff ranking that I want to watch for, and that's Fresno State at 25, Memphis at 20, and UCF at 14. I want to see either a UCF, a South Florida, or a Memphis play Fresno State. When you have those 2 teams that are not Power 5 schools, but are in the top 25 in the playoff rankings because of their good records by the end of the season, I think that'd be a fun bowl game to watch. But additionally, going back to UCF, I think that they make a New Year's Six Bowl. I think they're going to be that one Group of 5 team to get in.
I think they make a New Year's Six Bowl as well, but I was having a conversation about this with one of my friends, and it just kind of sucks for some of these Group of 5 teams because, in a sense, their season's over before it starts, where they have no shot at the top 4 or making the playoffs because none of these Power 5 teams want to schedule a game against a Group of 5 team because it looks like a soft win in a sense. But these guys are 11-0. They've been flat out dominant this year, and I'm excited to see them in a New Year's Six Bowl if they get there because I think they can prove their worth. But this just goes back to why the college football playoff needs to expand and let at least one Group of 5 team in every year to give them relevance, one, and give them a chance.
And if not that, then I think they should, and obviously this is a topic that's always thrown out there, and I think additionally it's something that would be very time-consuming and difficult to do, so I think Lyle's idea is better. But I think some sort of conference realignment wouldn't be bad either. Even if it's trying to add teams to conferences, whether it's trying to mix and match Group 5
conferences. Get the correct number of teams that the name matches on the conference, or change the number of team or names.
Exactly. Like if we're at Big 12, if you want to add a Boise State in there, that'd be cool. Pac-12, if you wanted to add a San Diego State or a Fresno State, give other teams a chance to complete at a Power 5 level.
Drop what, Oregon State from the Big 12?
No. I think it would just be expansion, kind of like the Big 10.
You'd have to add 2.
But really quickly, staying on
Fresno State too.
Staying on this, I mean, we talk about non-Power 5 conferences, but I feel like the American Conference is honestly underrated. It's a very good conference. Just going down the list, Memphis, who's been phenomenal this season. Houston, who over the last 5 or 6 years, they've been one of the best teams. They're 7-4 this year, so they've kind of died down a bit. Navy, they've been consistently good the last few years, it seems. SMU's always in contention. Tulane, Tulsa, they're schools that are always kind of around that 4 to 6 win range, so nothing too spectacular. And then UCF this year has been phenomenal. USF, who's been phenomenal. Temple a few years ago, they were ranked.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, they're always somewhat decent, and then East Carolina, UConn, they're always kind of near the bottom. But the American Conference, I mean, it's a good conference. It doesn't get enough respect that it deserves. So, UCF, they're sitting there at 14 undefeated. Those are still some tough teams they got to play with, maybe the exception of UConn, ECU, and Tulsa.
I don't remember which one of you guys said it, but we've said this a couple times throughout the season. They're a replica of Western Michigan from last year.
Yeah, they are.
And it's really cool to see that these smaller teams that you know who they are, but you don't know who they are. You don't know the players on the team. You don't know the flashy guys that are all in this roster and their coach, everything. But they can come and compete with all these bigger teams, and that's really cool to see. I love how these Power 5 or non-Power 5 teams have a chance to make a New Year's Six Bowl.
And that's kind of just the Western Michigan was kind of just what I was touching on. Look how relevant they were last year. And this year,
And the fall off they had.
they've kind of fallen off. And then Fresno State, who's back in it. Just a few years ago, they had Derek Carr and were, a 10-win team playing in the Vegas Bowl against a Pac-12 team. And now they fell off. Last year, they were in the worst of the worst, I think, twice. And then this year, they're 9-3 back in the top 25.
Well, the thing about Western Michigan is when you lose your starting quarterback and your head coach, you are going to have,
And your wide receiver.
I was going to say, and should I add
Corey
Davis?
That's right. So you lose all those weapons, and of course you're going to have a little downfall. But going down the rest of the list, I mean, honestly, there's really no relevance from 12 on. I think it's pretty good, though, no complaints. Mississippi State, I don't know why they're still in there. They fell 9 spots, but man, 8-4, I don't know. But I like seeing Fresno State in there. I was telling this to Lyle earlier. I've been saying this for the last few weeks. Fresno State, I literally think they had 1 win last year, and all of a sudden they have 9 this year. So what a turnaround. I think that head coach, whatever kind of coaching awards there are out there, he should definitely be in consideration for one of them, because a +8 win turnaround, that's remarkable. And it is Jeff Tedford. So Jeff Tedford, good for you. His first year.
It used to be Tim DeRuyter.
They have the 12th best defense in the country, only allowing 17 points a game. So whatever you did over there in Fresno, well done. But guys, I want to start talking about some scenarios here, because there is a lot that can happen. Now, we could just have a very boring weekend in which Clemson, Auburn, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin all win, and the top 4, for the most part, is going to stay the exact same. But that's no fun. So let's start having some fun here, guys. And let's just say Clemson, Miami. And Miami gets it done. We mentioned it earlier really quickly, but would Miami have what it takes to leapfrog into the top 4, assuming the other 3 teams win?
I mean, plain and simple, yeah, I think so. I touched on it earlier, but if you beat the number 1 team in the country and win your conference, considering Miami only has 1 loss, I think they get in. I think they just flip-flop with Clemson, to be honest. Maybe not go to number 1, but Clemson goes out, they go in.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Clemson's 11-1, so I think if they lose, like you said, Blake, it depends on how boring this weekend is, or how, I guess, typical or expected this weekend is I guess what I should say. But it depends on that. I think Clemson, you could still make an argument for them getting in, but once again, they're just another 2-loss team that's trying to fight for a playoff spot. In which case, I think if Miami wins, they should be back up in the conversation, no doubt.
Also, winning late is always more hurtful than winning early, because it's fresh in the committee's mind. If Clemson loses late, especially in the last week of the season, I think it's going to hurt them.
So now we got Alabama, who's sitting there at 5, who I believe has been in every college football playoff that's come out. Now, I think the only chance that they have of getting in is having probably Wisconsin lose. I think if Auburn goes down, then Georgia's going to be the team that slides right in. At least I think they should be. So I think Alabama, you better hope that Wisconsin goes down. Or Oklahoma. A lot of people are forgetting about Oklahoma. They are going to be playing TCU, who is Brady's still pick of the year. And people aren't giving TCU enough credit. TCU can definitely come in, steal the win. And because, like I said, everyone is just assuming that Oklahoma is going to be the one team. Everyone's talking about, what happens if Wisconsin loses? What happens if Auburn or Clemson lose? It can easily happen to Oklahoma. So all of a sudden, if Oklahoma goes down, I think that helps Alabama slide right in.
It does, but I thought you were about to say TCU had a chance. They're not moving 7 spots.
No, I remember I heard something earlier. It was like, does TCU stand some shot? I'm just looking at this list, and I think would have to be like Clemson would have to lose. I mean, even if everyone lost, I don't think TCU would have any chance because they're at 11. I think they should have been put like at 9 or 8 to make it a little more interesting. But here's another one as well. Ohio State, they are sitting there at 8. And obviously, if they get a win over Wisconsin, I do not think that is enough. I don't think that's going to get them in. So I think the only chance that Ohio State has, if they want to get in, they need to beat Wisconsin. And they better hope that Oklahoma loses, because I think if Clemson falls to Miami, Miami's just going to slip right in. And if Auburn loses to Georgia, they got to slide right in. So Ohio State's sitting there at 8. It is a long shot, but they need a lot to go their way this week. But that would be something if they can leapfrog into the top 4 all of a sudden.
It would be, and like Brady said earlier, I think they'd have to absolutely demolish Wisconsin for it to happen. But we've given Wisconsin a lot of hate this year, but one thing about them is their defense. They've let up 20 points or more once this season, and it was to Northwestern. So Ohio State, man, they're going to need to bring their A game on offense if they want to have a chance.
And when I say demolish, I mean like what they did to them 2 or 3 years ago. It was like 56-0. That's the type of game that Ohio State would need to get any question to jump back up.
And I can see them winning, but I don't see that happening. I don't see them winning 56-0 or anything like that.
Isn't it amazing, though, how Alabama's 11-0 on the season? Everything's going right. They lose the last game of the season, and all of a sudden now, not only are they out of SEC title hopes, pretty much, their playoff hopes are almost diminished just because you lost one game at the very end of the year.
And hey, I might get hate for this, but Bama, if you're not happy about it, Bama fans, don't schedule a bunch of cupcakes early in the season. Don't play Colorado State. Okay, Fresno State, now looking back on it, is an impressive win considering they are ranked. But this happens every year with Bama. Like, they have a bunch of nobodies in their schedule. Why is Mercer in their schedule? Why? Why is their non-conference schedule filled up with a bunch of Power 5 teams that are going to compete and give them a good game? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I know some people are probably going to say, okay, they played USC last year, they played Florida State this year when they were supposed to be good, but they need more tougher out-of-conference games.
They played Mercer in their second to last game of the season, too. That's like, hey, we need a bye week, but we don't have any more space for a bye week. Let's schedule them right before Auburn. So then you go in and then they lose. I was on the phone with my dad today, and he says, you know what? I think teams like USC and like Stanford should schedule these Mercer teams in their second to last game of the season so that they're more hyped up for their rivalry game, so that they're more hyped up for their conference championship. Obviously, in Bama's case, it didn't work because they lost to Auburn. But why are teams at the scale of Alabama playing FCS teams in their second to last game of the season or on their schedules at all?
And Josh mentioned what would be a bye week against Mercer, essentially. And it essentially was, considering Jalen Hurts, I think, played 2 drives in that game and then sat.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. But obviously now, that week 1 win against Florida State, that was going to be probably their convincing win. But now, that's not looking like much because I think Florida State has only 5 wins. But definitely going to be an exciting weekend. I sure hope that one of these top 4 teams goes down, because if these 4 all win out, well, we're all going to know what the top 4 is going to be. I want to see some shakeups. I want to see 2 or even 3 of these teams go down. Who knows? I just want to see some chaos ensue. But guys, there were quite a bit of coaching changes and firings and everything that's happened in the past week. A lot to get over, so I had to write them down in my handy-dandy notebook right here so we can go over each one. The first one I want to talk about is Chip Kelly being hired by the UCLA Bruins. Now, essentially what it looks like, it came down to UCLA and Florida, which is very interesting. I would have thought more teams would have been at the helm trying to get him. What are your guys' thoughts on Chip Kelly now going to UCLA?
I think it's a good move for UCLA. I'm not too sure what went into this deal because obviously he thinks it's a good fit. That's what he said. I don't see how this fits at all. I mean, UCLA, to my experience watching them since I was a kid, that when I think of UCLA, I don't think of a Chip Kelly offense. I don't think of anything. I don't think the two match at all. And in terms of recruiting, I had talked with a few people on Twitter, and they said that now UCLA's recruiting is going to be through the roof and they're going to dominate. I don't know about that. I think the recruiting is obviously going to get better because of Chip Kelly. But here's the thing. At Oregon, he could dangle uniforms over potential recruits, and they loved it and they would commit. Also, when he went to Oregon, he was picking up the pieces of what coaches like Mike Bellotti left in place for him. And Oregon was starting to emerge into a national spotlight when he got the job and was there for 5 or 6 years. So I think he was able to work with more. Right now, the pieces that are in place at UCLA are not going to be easily put back together. I think there's going to be a lot of work. I think that Chip Kelly, out of any of the other potential coaches in the country who were, prospects for this position, I think he's going to do the best out of any of them. So I think he has the best chance to succeed at UCLA. I just don't see how it fits, and I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see how UCLA builds off of what they had this season. I think they're going to start expanding into new uniforms, alternate uniforms.
I think it's a good move. Plain and simple, UCLA's had 3 straight mediocre seasons or worse in football, and I think it's just time for a change, which Chip Kelly brings. Let him bring in his own guys. Let him change the offense. Let him do his thing, because we know he's had success as a college coach at Oregon. He wasn't a great NFL coach, but now he's going back to where he fits and where he thrives in college football in the Pac-12. And California, specifically that Los Angeles area, some of the best talent in the country comes out of there. And while a lot of it's going to go to USC, Chip Kelly can recruit. He's going to get some of those guys, and I think we're going to see him turn this UCLA program around.
Like Lyle said, he was a great college coach when he was at Oregon. He held his team to a high standard. They were always a top elite team. Great, look at the athletes that he had. He had Michael James as his running back. Whatever happened to him? But when you jump him to the NFL, he wanted to be in charge of too much. So I think that's why he didn't succeed. He had the pieces, he had the offense, he had the mindset. He just wanted to be in charge of too much in the NFL. He was trying to take over like a Bill Belichick style role, but you bring him back to this team like UCLA, and like Lyle said, and it's very well known, that Southern California area has some of the best talent, best schools, athletic-wise, in the country, high schools. And you can recruit these kids that, say, would have gone to USC, sorry Josh and Blake. Now you could get that push to say, hey, here's this big-name, fancy head coach, you're going to come coach here, and we're going to turn some things around, redo the tradition, bring back old stuff, bring back new stuff. Like Josh said, maybe new uniforms. So I really like the hire of Chip Kelly at UCLA. I think he wanted a different job. It wasn't open at the time, but he took the second best option that he wanted. He wanted to come here to Arizona State.
I think he did too.
He absolutely did. But ASU didn't announce that Coach Graham was fired when Kelly said he wanted to come here, and he jumped over to the Bruins.
I think it's a great move. I've been waiting for UCLA to finally be competitive so USC-UCLA can be a fun rivalry. And it's just more fun when there's more Pac-12 teams that are competitive, because UCLA the last few years has not been competitive. Here's one really quickly that's a very interesting one, I thought, and that is Dan Mullen, who's going from Mississippi State to Florida. So he stays in the SEC. Now, obviously, Florida is an upgrade over Mississippi State, but I mean, you're Florida. I think you're probably one of those 5 or 6 teams that can literally get essentially any coach you want. So guys, do you think they settled for Mullen, he put up some good years at Mississippi State a few years ago, but mainly the last few years hasn't really been doing that much there?
I think it's a good hire for Florida. I really do. I think Mullen's done a pretty good job at Mississippi State. I think it's interesting he's staying in the SEC. I wouldn't even be surprised if we start to see a little bit of a rivalry there, to be totally honest. But I think it's a good hire.
I think it's a good hire, too. We have to remember Dan Mullen used to be at Florida, and now he's going back to his roots. Another thing about Florida is they always have those great defenses, but they've struggled to produce very good quarterbacks over the last few years. And you think about some of the success Mullen's had with quarterbacks, between Tim Tebow, between Dak Prescott, between a lot of others. I think he can develop this Florida team. I think he can bring in some good quarterbacks. And again, I think he can change this program.
Dan Mullen was at Mississippi State for 9 years, led them to 7 bowl games, 5-2 in that span. He has a winning record. I think it was 69 and 46.
Nice.
He was 69 and 46 during his time at Mississippi State. Perfect 60% record. I really like this hire because Florida's been in a lull ever since they lost Urban Meyer, which was, how many years ago was that? 5 years ago? 6 years ago? They've been in a lull. They haven't been back to that prestige when they had Tim Tebow, Percy Harvin, that duo. I really like Dan Mullen jumping down. Yes, he's sticking in the SEC, but like Josh said, it's going to get a little bit of a rivalry now. It's when you see your ex-girlfriend in public for the first time, you want to do something to impress them. So when these two teams match up next, it's going to be a shootout, and it's going to be fun for both teams. Dan Mullen on this Florida side, I think Mississippi State's going to get some new stuff there that can show Dan Mullen what he's missing out.
It would be interesting. You mentioned Florida, how their offensive game has been atrocious. Potentially might get a transfer in Wilton Spate there. Wouldn't that be something?
Oh, jeez. That's the quarterback you want leading your team? No offense.
Hey, it's an upgrade over Malik Zaire. That's for certain.
Oh. I think Felipe Frank still has a chance to be good. You got to remember, he's only a freshman.
Now, here's one. I always butcher his name as I always do. Brett, it's Bielema, right? Is that
Bielema.
Bielema. Yeah, he was fired. Now, this one, from what I've heard, is he was literally fired like the second the game ended as he was like running on the field. Like someone told him, hey, you gone. So he leaves Arkansas. He was there for a few years, but man, Arkansas, they have just been not a good team in the SEC.
Kind of like DeMarcus Cousins being traded in the middle of the All-Star game. You find out on your way out. He's rushing the field after the game, and I think it was the SID, our athletic director, came up to him and said, hey, you gone. You're fired.
So now he's gone in Arkansas. Now here's another one that's gone. Mike Riley at Nebraska. He's gone after just multiple disappointing seasons at Nebraska. Kevin Sumlin, he's gone at Texas A&M. He seemed like he was that ideal fit a few years ago. It has not looked good in Aggie land.
There were a few big-time coaching jobs that opened within the past few years where Sumlin was the top target. And now I think the people that were considering Sumlin a few years ago from those big schools are kind of glad that they decided to pass on that opportunity.
Another one I want to touch up on really quickly, and that is this whole Greg Schiano incident, where a few days ago Tennessee announced that they were going to hire him as the coach, and there was just a public outcry that was pretty shocking to say the least, where pretty much everyone from players to coaches and everyone just in Tennessee for the most part absolutely did not want him as the coach, and then all of a sudden, I think it was yesterday, Tennessee backed out.
Not only was it players and coaches giving backlash, it was students, it was former players, it was public officials, it was government officials, all in the state of Tennessee saying, we do not want this guy here. And one of the big reasons was his alleged involvement in the Penn State, Jerry Sandusky, Joe Paterno trials that have happened.
And there was no involvement.
There was no involvement.
None.
He was 23 years old. He was a graduate assistant at Penn State at the time of the alleged incident, and people were saying he was a cover guy. He knew everything was going on, and he was like, listen, I was just a graduate assistant. I had no role doing anything. My job pretty much was to clean up practice. That's what his job was, and to get water bottles for some of the head coaches and some of the main coaches. So I think one of the main reasons why they when I say they, the students, everybody who was protesting this, was because they didn't get the guy they wanted. And it's been publicly known that they want John Gruden. Who knows if Gruden's going to leave his job at ESPN making $6.5 million a year? Would you leave talking about sports for $6.5 million? No, probably not. But they want Gruden, so that's why they're just protesting everything. No matter who they hire. Hell, they could get Nick Saban. Not going to happen, but they'll protest. They'll get somebody, they'll protest, unless they get the one guy they want, and that's John Gruden.
And this makes Tennessee look very weak, which is another reason if I were a coach, I would stay away from there at all costs, because now it just seems like, if students are going to protest, if people are going to protest, is the athletic director, is the government, or not the government of the school, but the heads of the school, everybody that's executive there, are they just going to backfire and say, students are unhappy, people are unhappy, we'll try again, we'll not give this guy a job, we'll go after somebody else.
I think it absolutely hurts them. I mean, after seeing this, what coach is going to want to go there now? Because if he goes, there might be public outcry that they don't want him either. I think this is going to just hurt Tennessee. I think now they're coaching, with what's available, there's not that much available anymore. So who knows what they're going to get. But that Tennessee program is just going downhill, and they're going downhill fast. But guys, this does bring us to the last coach who I guess you could say has been fired, but he's technically not yet because he is going to coach in the bowl game. And that is the one, the only Todd Graham. Now, guys, we've all had our fair share of opinions and things to say on Todd Graham throughout the years. Each one of us can admit that. And I'll be the first to say I absolutely hate with a passion this decision. And I'm going to explain why. Coming into the year, me personally, I was on Todd Graham because he's had a few letdown seasons. Josh mentioned one of the reasons we should keep him is because what he did a few years ago, how he did get those 10-win seasons. The recruits have been coming in, give the guy a shot, and I was hesitant on that. He did have a 7-5 season, which is still not what you want, especially at ASU. But here's some things you got to take into consideration. One, they beat the number 5 team in the country, that is Washington. I think it was their highest rated win since '96 against Nebraska. so that happened. They beat U of A, which is arguably, the most important game of the season. But you look at their record at 7-5. And they also beat Oregon, who was ranked at the time. It does look like a good win. You look at the record and you see 7-5, and you're thinking, okay, it's not so good. It is a 2-win improvement on last year, which is a little good. But I remember Josh, I don't know if he remembers the tweet that much, but he found this tweet where I think it was they had the second best conference turnaround in all of college football.
Tied for second along with the U of A.
So, I mean, I forget what exactly it was, but I think it was by 4 wins.
4.
It was by 4. So he had a 4-win improvement from last season to this season. So obviously he was getting better. The recruits are coming in. This defense this year, guys, I think we can make the case that last year the offense was better and the defense was worse. I think this year the defense was better and the offense was worse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we would have had an offense, I think there were some games, and we keep on mentioning this. There were only 2 games we feel that we were completely out of. USC, and then Josh says San Diego State. That one you can make a case for, but like San Diego State, they lost by, I think it was 8 points or something like that. They could have had a chance in that one. Stanford, if it wasn't for Bryce Love, they would have been all over that one. The UCLA,
that was a good loss for ASU too.
Stanford. I mean, that's a good loss now. UCLA, that one still hurts. And what's the other one I'm missing right now?
Texas Tech.
The Texas Tech one. Yeah, they lost by a touchdown. So they had a bunch of close
Getting
wins.
killed and came back.
And the thing I don't like the most is, number one, if you're getting Chip Kelly, which I do think they would have had a high chance if this would have happened last week, if you're going to get Chip Kelly, I'm all for it, mainly because you do need to improve the offense. But other than that, I don't think they're improving the team at all by whoever they get. Now, we're going to get to who the names they're throwing out in a bit, but I don't think that's going to help. And another thing is, one final thing, the AD, Ray Anderson, in his press conference, he mentioned 5 things that he wants from his head coach, and I don't remember what all 5 of them were, but the thing I was seeing from all the comments were Todd Graham was literally 4.5 of those things that he wanted. The half that he wasn't was that he felt like 2 wins shy of what Ray Anderson was expecting. But Todd Graham, like from the public outcry you've seen, he had the respect from his players, he had the respect from fans, and he had the respect from everyone everywhere. And everyone's saying, aside from Frank Kush, this has been the best coach in Arizona State history. And after seeing how Todd Graham has handled the situation as well, he could have easily been better. He could have said some horrible things, but he was nothing but respectful. And I think, what was it, the final words he said were, "Go Devils"?
He said, I'm a Sun Devil at heart.
Yeah.
He said, "Go Devils" at the end. He kept referring to us as we, the team, in his press conference. He truly loved and embodied being a Sun Devil.
Yep.
At the end of the game against U of A, he just stood there in front of one of the student sections and held up a pitchfork for 15, 30 seconds and just smiled.
Yeah.
Just enjoyed it.
Yep.
Took it all in. He knew he was going to be fired and just took it all in.
Yeah.
That's cool. He didn't hang his head. He didn't be like, "Oh, I was fired, whatever, just get out of here." He really enjoyed being part of this program.
Coming into Arizona State, I was so behind our athletic department, and I've always been behind Todd Graham, but I did agree with you guys, and it's something that I said time and time again last season. 3 strikes and you're out. And for me, this was not strike 3. The fact that you were predicted to go 6-6 at best, you did get one more when you were 7-5, with multiple close games which you could have won. There were a few games that you should have won. However, there were some games you should have lost, and they didn't. I have lost so much respect for this athletic department right now. I don't care if it makes me sound like a fan. I lost a lot of respect for this athletic department because I think Todd Graham, on the inside and outside, is what a Sun Devil should be like. He had the respect of his players, the respect of his coaches, the respect of the fans. And that's the thing. He lost the respect of the fans, and he earned it back. And I think that he earned back the respect from his players. I'm not saying he ever lost it, but if he did. But it's the fact that so many players that have passed through the program were voicing their opinions. Journalists who have come out of Arizona State, Matt Berry is one of them, voiced his opinion saying that he was a Sun Devil through and through. And honestly, if you're looking at thinking you should fire him, you fire him after UCLA. Yeah.
So what you said, Josh, was if Graham should have been fired, it should have been after UCLA. Well, I'll tell you this. On the field, in the press conferences and hearing from the media at this past game, the U of A game, he was fired after UCLA.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd bring this up.
He was informed that he was going to be let go no matter the result of the end of the season after the loss to UCLA. It wasn't made public. It wasn't announced. I don't know if ASU went out and searched for a new head coach at the time, but he was fired and was informed he was going to be let go after UCLA. And I think one of the main reasons this happened was you look how he started his tenure here. Was it right out of the gate 10-win season?
Yeah.
If it was flipped, say he started off 5-7 like they were last year, and then you go 6-5 and you get better and better. Totally different script.
Yeah.
He started off at such a high prestige when he came in here, and you jump back up. They were in a bowl game, 4 of the 6 years he was here?
Yeah.
You can't get a better percentage than that. Granted, yes, you have to win the bowl game, yada, whatever. But you lead your team to a bowl game 4 of the 6 years. I do not like this decision. I think if you do it, if you fire him, you wait until next year after the first 2 or 3 games, after you play Michigan State.
Yeah.
All right, well, here's where this thing's probably going to get heated because I think everybody sitting here knows that my opinion's the outlier on this one. 2016, they start off 5-1. This guy loses, or whatever it was, this guy loses 5 straight games. Arizona State misses a bowl. Now he's on the hot seat. Comes in 2016. What separates great coaches from the rest is their ability to win road games. Todd Graham wins 2 road games in the Pac-12 this year. At Oregon State, who's arguably the worst team in the Power 5, and then Utah, who finishes 5th in the South. And then also, all these fans were calling for Graham's head for so long, and because he wins a game against Arizona, who's 7-5, mediocre at best, they fell off toward the end of the year. Now all of a sudden, when he gets fired, everybody's losing their mind, saying, why'd they fire him, why'd they fire him? Plain and simple, in my opinion, you want Todd Graham as your coach. What you're saying is you're okay with mediocrity. And I understand that he had love for this team. He's a Sun Devil at heart. His players loved him, all that. This isn't a fairy tale, guys. You want to win games, you got to get a coach in here who you think is going to win. That's what Ray Anderson's trying to do. Is his method great? Maybe not. But in my opinion, there is a better coach out there than Todd Graham. ASU just has to do its best to find him.
See, I disagree that there's a better coach. Like you said, maybe Kevin Sumlin, but that's
a downgrade, I think.
That's I don't know. Like that's my thing. I was all for firing Todd Graham, but I don't see them improving. Like, are they going to hire some coach and magically win 10 games next year?
Well,
this is a guy that players want to play for, too.
Well, hopefully our next coach doesn't lose 5 in a row like Graham did and we miss a bowl game. That's not acceptable anywhere, let alone a Pac-12 school that should be competing every year.
This is something where he came into Arizona State and the program was in shambles, and he turned it around like that. He turned this program around since the minute he stepped in the door, and this program is 10 times better off with him as their coach.
So my thing is really quickly though, I mean, if they get this win in the bowl game, they're going to be an 8-win team, which I mean that's a good season for a lot of college football programs. Maybe not the top tier ones, but 8 wins is very good,
and
especially
real
when
quickly,
in your
Arizona
current,
State.
Not for Ray Anderson.
Arizona State is not a top. They're not a white collar football program. That's something we have to accept.
And when you think about it, looking at the Pac-12, I mean, they are the 4th or 5th best team in the conference. They're not going to be better than USC. They're not going to be better than Stanford. They're not going to be better than UW. I think if Justin Herbert doesn't go down with that injury, Oregon's finishing in the top 25. So you can make a case they're not better than Oregon. So they're easily the 5th or 6th best team. Like I said, Todd Graham's going out. He's getting the recruits. You can't put that all on Todd Graham. It's not his fault that he has the 5th or 6th best team in the conference. Like I said, he really set the expectations high when he got those 10-win seasons. But with the turnaround he had, Josh mentioned it, he was borderline third strikes. I think next season, if he does start 1-2, 2-4, that's when you let him go. But the turnaround that they had this season, you can't ignore it. As we mentioned, the 2nd best in-conference turnaround in college football this season.
When was the last time he had a good road win?
It doesn't matter. They beat
Yes,
the
it
number
does.
5 team in the
2015,
country.
they beat the number 7 team, UCLA.
Okay, so it's been over 2
I'd
years.
say Utah this year as well.
I would say
5th
Utah
in the
this year.
South.
Wow, just
5th in the South.
Name me 2 coaches that they can get.
Les Miles.
That would be
No.
Lyle, they're not getting Les
No.
Miles. Les Miles hasn't brought his name out of anyone, and I don't care about that Oregon State one. That was BS. Les Miles would not go to a 2-win Oregon State team.
Nope.
He would absolutely not. That rumor. There's
Well,
a
if that's what Ray Anderson's trying to do, that's who he should go
Okay,
after.
so not Les Miles. Name me 2 coaches. That would be an upgrade.
Honestly, I hate to say it, I don't love this Herm Edwards idea. But I still feel like it might end up being better than Todd Graham.
And
And
just one
also,
more.
you want to call this ridiculous too, but I know Bob Stoops says he's retired, but at least
Bob
reach out.
no.
At least reach out.
I'll tell you this: Mac Brown's thrown interest in the job
Yeah,
as well.
see, I don't think that's an
No.
upgrade.
No,
but
thanks.
You want one coach? I will give you one coach who I think is an upgrade, and I don't think
Nick Saban.
I would say, well, yeah, I would say,
down.
I would say Les Miles. However, I don't think there is no shed of hope in that. The one coach who I think would be an upgrade. You guys are not going to believe I'm going to say this. Lane Kiffin.
I said that to you the other day.
Lane
And you're like,
Kiffin.
haha, whatever.
Lane Kiffin.
I was being serious about
Yeah.
it.
I don't think he comes, but Lane Kiffin.
See,
why not reach out to Bob Stoops? If he says, hey, I'm retired, then fine. But why not reach out and offer it to him? I'll give you one more. And I know Ray Anderson said he wants somebody with head coaching experience. This is something I've talked about with our friend Brady Vernon. Brett Venables, defensive coordinator at Clemson. 2016, he wins the Broyles Award for nation's top assistant coach. 2017, what's Clemson doing this year? They're the number 1 team in the country, one of the best defenses in the country. Why not say, hey, we've got a head coaching job here at Arizona State? That's an intriguing name, if you ask me.
Well, I just want to wrap up Todd Graham. All I know is, Ray Anderson, if you're listening, you better be on your knees praying to the sweet dear Lord baby Jesus that next year ASU wins at least 9 games. Because if they don't, you're gonna be gone. I think if they
He's calling out Ray Anderson.
Hey, Ray, please let me keep my credentials.
No, I'm being 100% honest. If they
Me
do
too.
this, if they lose Todd Graham and they go out and they win 6 or 7 or even 8 games next year, Ray Anderson, he should be gone. He should be. Now, if ASU wins 10 games next year or 11, he pulls this off, he's a genius. But if not, you gone.
So I will tell you guys this: I was right at the post game handshake between Rich Rod and Coach Graham, and it was a quick hey, good job, congratulations, you're done. And Graham pulled him back in and said, before any of this official news came out, said, hey, it was an honor coaching against you. I don't believe I'm going to be here next season. So good job with these last couple of years. I really enjoyed it. And they had a heartfelt they hugged and had an actual handshake instead of just whatever, F off, whatever. It was an actual heartfelt, Graham told him what was happening. And that was a really cool moment to see in this game that's so heated. You could say there's so much hate, but there's also a lot of respect in the rivalry as well. But seeing Graham tell Rich Rod after the game was really cool.
Well, there was a lot to talk about this week, so sadly no Q&A, but I have a good feeling that a lot of the questions we're going to be involving this week's upcoming college football playoff rankings, what we think is going to happen. So that does transition us into the pick'ems, but guys, I think this is officially Agent Killa Deluxe's now. He has a 6-point lead. There's 10 games he has to pick this week, so barring some week where he literally gets none of them right and someone sneaks in, Agent Killa Deluxe, it is officially yours. DM me on Twitter and we will get you that gift card. I'm very excited to hear what his gift card of choice is going to be. I mean, it's anything, so we're going to have to wait and see on that one. But guys, we do have our own pickup rankings as well. They're not official yet because we do have one final week remaining. In last place with 82 points is yours truly.
Yay!
In third place with 87 is Lyle. In second place with 89 is Brady. And in first with 98 is Josh. He has officially just leapfrogged over everyone. He had an amazing week.
Thank you.
He just couldn't be stopped. So Josh, get your victory speech ready for next week because it looks like you are going to be the Season 2 Pick'em winner. This week's Pick'em edition is Championship Week edition. We are going to be doing Pick'ems for all the championship games. The first one is the Pac-12 Championship, which is this Friday evening. That features the number 12 Stanford Cardinal and the number 10 USC Trojans.
What scares me about this game for USC is the fact that Stanford has progressively gotten better throughout the course of the season, and USC kind of hasn't. They're kind of up and down. Also, Bryce Love is really good. Surprise. Yeah, exactly. But in reality, I think the Trojans are the better team. I think they have more offensive weapons. I think they have more offensive firepower. Defensively, I think they have better playmakers. I think the Trojans get the win. I think it comes down to a touchdown, and I think it comes down to a late fourth quarter touchdown by the Trojans. They win the first Pac-12 championship by a South Division team. I think the Trojans take it.
Stanford's been hot lately. They're going to give the Trojans a run for their money, but I like the Trojans in this game. They get the win.
I have a trend of picking teams with mascots that don't end in S.
Oh, no.
But this week I'm picking one that ends in S, and they're going to hand an L to Stanford. I'm going to go USC.
Now, this one, it's tough because it's very difficult to beat the same team twice in 1 year, especially when it's a very good team. Stanford, they've been playing hotter than I thought they'd be. I mean, they've looked good as of late. USC, the last few games haven't looked... The UCLA game, that was kind of scary. I hate to do it. I'm going to go with Stanford in this one. I just think they have all the momentum currently in this. We got the American Conference Championship between the number 20 Memphis Tigers and the 14th ranked Central Florida Knights.
Now, I think Memphis is a very good team. They have a pretty good offense, I think evident from a couple of their early season games, such as UCLA and UConn. They put up 70 points against UConn. They put up 70 points against East Carolina. Put put up 66 against SMU. They don't have a defense, and I think UCF has a better defense, and that is evident in UCF's 40-13 win over Memphis earlier in the season. I'm taking the Knights. I think they end their I don't want to call this regular season because I guess conference championships are postseason technically, I guess. I think they end their regular and pre-postseason 12-0.
I think this game's going to be an absolute thriller. Riley Ferguson, quarterback for Memphis, he's a stud, man. 3,500 yards, 32 touchdowns on the year. He's going to give UCF all they can handle. However, I like the Knights in this game very close.
I like UCF in this game.
Memphis, I mean, we should give them more credit than they deserve. They have, I mean, when we were talking about quarterback-wide receiver duos, that Ferguson-Miller duo was actually one of the best in the country. I mean, that very underrated, as I mentioned, but I do think UCF is the better team, and they get the job done. The conference, well, actually, no, we're getting ahead of ourselves. The MAC championship features Akron and Toledo.
I think the Toledo Rockets zip past the Akron Zips this weekend. They zipped past them earlier in the year, 48-21, and we continue to talk about how, it's tough to beat a team twice. But for the 3 conference championship games we've picked thus far, the teams that have won the prior contest have won convincingly, and I will once again pick the team who had a convincing win, and that is Toledo.
Toledo's been really solid this year, 10-2 on the year. I like them in this game.
I picked Toledo at the beginning of this year, if you guys remember, along with that TCU pick, as a sleeper team to watch out for. They're sitting at 10-2. I'm picking Toledo in this game.
I like Toledo as well. The Conference USA Championship between the North Texas Mean Green and the Florida Atlantic Owls.
Once again, nothing changing for me. Florida Atlantic had a convincing 69-31 over North Texas earlier in the season. So once again, I'm taking the winner of the previous time these teams played, and that is Florida Atlantic. Go Kiffin.
It's been impressive what
Never
Kiffin's
said that before.
It's been impressive what Kiffin's done this year. We make jokes, but the way he's turned that Florida Atlantic team around, it's been impressive. I like him in this game. I like Florida Atlantic.
I like Florida Atlantic in this one. I think, once again, I'm picking against a team that doesn't have an S at the end of their mascot, the Mean Green. But I'm taking the Owls in this one.
North Texas, I believe they are 9-3 on the season, so they're a somewhat good team. But Lane Kiffin, Florida Atlantic, I think they started off the season with a loss or two. Things were looking good. They've just completely turned this around. They're on an 8-game winning streak, so they were 1-2, and he has completely turned that team around. I am going to go with Florida Atlantic in this one, which does bring us to a nice, good matchup, and that is the Big 12 title game. I know what you're thinking, a Big 12 title game. They have that now? Yes, it's a Cowboy Stadium, and that is between the 11th-ranked TCU Horned Frogs and the 3rd-ranked Oklahoma Sooners.
It is hard to pick against Baker Mayfield and Oklahoma at this point. Again, it's hard to beat a team twice. They beat them earlier in the year, and I'm not picking them because they had a convincing win earlier in the year. I'm picking Oklahoma because, plain and simply, I think they are the better team. I'm taking Baker Mayfield, the Heisman winner to be, to take down TCU.
Oklahoma already beat TCU once this year. Baker Mayfield, no need to touch on for too long what he's done this year. He's the Heisman frontrunner and more. I like the Sooners in this game. I think they win big.
I have to do this because from day one, I have to do this. I'm going TCU in this game. Do I think they're going to win? Nope. Am I picking them to win? Yup.
Really quick, guys, I just want to touch up on this. Let's just say that Oklahoma loses to TCU. Baker Mayfield has an okay game, throws like 150 yards, throws a few interceptions. What if Bryce Love in the Stanford SC game has like 4 touchdowns? Stanford beats USC. I'm not saying it can happen, but could we potentially see a Bryce Love overtake Baker Mayfield for the Heisman?
That's
if Oklahoma
what I'm
loses
hoping
the
Not
game?
at 1-20 odds.
That's what I'm saying, though. It would
Odds
be.
change every day and every week, Lyle.
Yeah, Lyle.
Yes, they do.
I am going to go in Oklahoma in this game, but TCU, man, they do. I believe they have the best defense in the Big 12, so definitely do not overlook them in this one. We have now the SEC title game, which in my opinion is going to be the best title game this upcoming weekend, and that features the number 6 Georgia Bulldogs against the number 2 Auburn Tigers. The winner of this game is going to the playoff.
Guys, Auburn has beaten the number 1 team in the country not once, but twice. And that number 1 team in the country at one point, the most convincing of their 2 wins, was against Georgia. Now, because I have pretty much solely locked up the pick'ems in this league. Obviously, I hope I'm not getting too confident, but I think mathematically it's impossible for me to lose at this point, so why the hell not?
All of us have pretty much picked the same teams, Josh.
Yeah, I know. Guys, I'm going to go Georgia. They got killed the first time these two teams played. This game is no longer at Jordan-Hare. I think Georgia pulls out a slim victory over Auburn, and unfortunately for Auburn, I don't think they make the playoff.
Obviously, beating a team twice in a year is really tough, and that's why I'm tempted to go with Georgia. However, Jarrett Stidham has been playing out of his mind these last few weeks. Auburn's been the hottest team in the country. I got to go with the Tigers.
I'm going with Georgia. And the possibility of them playing in this stadium 2 times in the span of a month.
I mean, as I mentioned, I think it's tough to beat a team twice in 1 year, but Auburn, I think they're too good right now. I think they're the best team in the country. I think they get this job done. I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game. I think it's going to be like a 14-10 type game, 17-14. Oh, exactly. The Mountain West Conference Championship that features the 25th ranked Fresno State Bulldogs against the Boise State Broncos. These two teams played each other last week.
Yeah, at this point, it is tough to pick against Fresno State. Picked Boise State last week, and I think that was a mistake. It is tough to beat a team twice. I'm taking Boise. I can't give you a... You know what?
I have a reason.
You know what? I'm switching. Because last week I picked Boise, but you know what? And I said this last year on the worst of the worst. My cousin went to Fresno State. She graduated from there. I've seen the Bulldogs play in person twice. So you know what? I am not going to pick against them this week. I'm going to take them against Boise State.
You know, it's funny. Boise State's a heavy favorite in this game, which you wouldn't expect. However, I'm going with Fresno State. I'm going to ride the hot hand.
Well, I'll tell you why Boise State's a heavy favorite in this game. Last week, these two teams played each other.
Yep.
Where? Fresno State. Where are these two teams playing each other this week in the conference championship? Oh, that's right. At Boise State.
Wait, why?
The championship game is on the Smurf turf at Boise State. I'm going Boise State at home. Technically, it's not a home game, but it's a home game for Boise State.
I'm going to go with Boise State as well because mainly the two teams played each other last week. Fresno State came out on top, and it was at home for them. The ACC title game, the number 7th ranked Miami Hurricanes at the number 1 ranked Clemson Tigers. The winner of this game, more than likely going to the playoff.
Clemson wins this game, and I think they win by 10 points. This is going to be a good game, and I'm excited to watch.
Not going to be a blowout, but I think Clemson wins pretty handily. As I mentioned earlier, only game they lost this year was when Kelly Bryant got hurt early in the game. Given that he's healthy, which he should be for this game, I like Clemson.
I like Clemson on this one, too. The game's being played in Charlotte, pretty close to Clemson, so I'm going to go with Clemson in this game.
I'm going to keep this short and simple. Clemson.
Thanks, Blake.
And now we got the Big Ten title game with the number 8 Ohio State Buckeyes and the number 4 Wisconsin Badgers.
Looking forward to the comments on this one. I'm taking Ohio State. I think this is going to be a good game. I'm not taking them to win big, but I do think they win this year's Big Ten championship in Indy.
You know what? I think this game's going to be really close. I think it's going to come right down to the wire. But I'm taking Wisconsin. This is for all of our Harris Highlights fans that are Wisconsin fans that we've given a lot of crap to throughout this year. Along with the fact that I think Wisconsin has a chance to do it. I don't think Ohio State's that impressive of a team. I'm not the biggest JT Barrett fan. I think that defense finds a way to keep Ohio State to little enough points where they pull out a win.
You know, Camergate happened in Michigan this past week. Who knows what's going to go on with JT Barrett? And apparently there's one other player on the team as well that got run off by a cameraman, I think is what happened. But I'm going Ohio State in this one in Indy.
This is like the perfect matchup for me because coming into the season, I picked Wisconsin to go undefeated, which they're about to, and I picked Ohio State to lose 4 games, which they still can. And by the way, I still think that can happen. Wisconsin's going to get this win. They're going to remain undefeated. They're going to go to the playoff. Ohio State's going to get their 3rd loss on the season before they get their 4th loss, and whatever bowl game they play in, that is my hot take. The guys, that does wrap up this week's edition of the Pick'em. Sadly, no Arizona State Pick'em because unfortunately they are not in their conference championship. But hey, maybe next year, right, Ray Anderson? Well, Christmas is officially less than 1 month away, so make sure you head on over to the Harris Highlights merch shop and get some merch. According to Brady, some people got some bumper stickers this past weekend.
Hey!
For what reason, we don't know, but hey, if you're listening out there and you got those bumper stickers, shout out.
Send a pic.
Shout out, yeah, send a pic.
Put them on that trunk.
Send a picture of that. As I mentioned, guys, this episode was brought to you by SeatGeek. Head over to SeatGeek.com, enter the promo code Harris Highlights, get $20 off your very first purchase. Follow us all on Twitter, like us on Facebook, listen to us on Soundcloud. I mean, I think that's all of our social medias. Follow us on Instagram.
Josh has a nice LinkedIn profile.
Oh,
yes.
yeah, thank you.
Checked out his LinkedIn profile. But guys,
that.
thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back. And next week's episode is going to be a good one because it's going to be a complete Bowl Mania projection. We're going to be going over every bowl game. I think there's 41 bowl games, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
Wow.
I know. I'm looking forward to it, guys. Quickly, what are your ASU bowl predictions?
I sure hope Holiday Bowl. I don't know if it happens. I think they go to the Sun Bowl.
Sun Bowl.
Foster Farms Bowl.
I sadly think it's going to be the Sun Bowl, but hey, who knows?
Sun Bowl's good. Just not
Stranger
for,
things have happened. I'm just trying to travel.
Well, yeah, just not. It's a good bowl, just not for the four of
Where's
us.
that at?
It's
That's
El Paso.
It's El Paso?
It's in El Paso. But for Lyle Goldstein, Josh Schaefer, and Brady Klein, this has been Blake Harris. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you guys next week, and let's hope that we have an amazing weekend of college football. We love you, Todd Graham.